Now, he wrote these 4 fallacies of warfare, which I find very, very interesting. And so we learned kind of the tactical side of what he learned from his battle at the 73 Easting. You know, he had 10 lessons learned, pretty tactical stuff, right? Now we're getting into a little bit more strategic level. We're talking about war in a broad sense. And so here's what he says about these 4 fallacies of warfare. There are 4 fallacies about future war that are preventing us from learning from our most recent experiences. McMaster said, these fallacies are portrayed in such a way that they reduce risk to United States interest when in fact they exacerbate risk because they over-rely on capabilities and they purposely ignore continuities in the nature of war. Okay, so he's saying, look, the way they portray these things is it makes everything good for America, but they actually make things worse for America because they ignore things in war that are always the same. This is war we're talking about. The nature of war does not change. Okay, his first fallacy, the vampire fallacy. It's a vampire fallacy. It's a vampire because you can't kill it and it comes back every 10 years. This is the belief that a narrow range of technological capabilities will deliver fast, cheap, and efficient victory in future war. The latest manifestation is the belief in a new range of technological capabilities, everything from big data analytics to artificial intelligence to drones and robotics and so forth. So what does that mean? We have an idea that we can, as a nation, we're so technologically advanced that nothing can stand up to us. And we can just use these precision weapons to take out enemy targets. And then it's over. It's a fallacy. It's a vampire. It's going to come back. You can't just kill it. It's going to come back. And, you know, obviously we saw that in Iraq. We had all kinds of technological advances over the enemy. But they continued to come back. And when we walked away, they came back strong. They were called ISIS. Now, I think that's pretty self-evident what that means. Now, what does this mean in business and in life? Well, to me, what this means is there's no easy solution. There's no easy solution to things, right? We look at something, we go, oh, we can just do this. We can just use some certain new technology, or we can just use some app, right? Oh, if I get an app to track my diet, then I'll be good to go. No. You got to stop putting the sugar in your mouth to be good to go. People want the shortcut. They think that there's an easy way to get things done. And there's not. You have to do the work. There's a vampire out there. What you got to do is you got to grab that vampire. You got to cut its head off. You got to soak it in holy water. And then you got to dry its bones out in the sun. That's what kills a vampire. All right? That's the attitude you have to take. You can't just think there's going to be a shortcut. We'll be through with this vampire, tomorrow. Because I have a cool gun. I'm going to shoot him. No. Bullets don't kill him. Got to go harder.
Yeah. I think the correct way to kill a vampire isn't to cut his head off. It's the wooden stake into the heart. I think you might be thinking of Medusa or something.
Okay. Just kind of FYI.
The holy water part was correct, though.
Yeah. Just so FYI. I don't mean to call you out here. I actually Googled how to kill a vampire.
Nah, that's wrong, though. Mythology says otherwise. You stick a wooden stake in his heart. Crucifix will get him if you have faith. Sunlight will kill him. So that was correct.
Holy water.
Holy water will get him for sure. Yeah.
All
and
right. Staying
let
corrected.
him dry in the. Yeah, I don't know what website said cut his head off.
Don't trust Google. Lesson learned. See?
Yeah.
You know what I did right there?
Oh.
Took a shortcut.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was a vampire. Just Google it real quick. We're good to go.
You know what you did? This is what I think you did. I think you Googled it, which is fine. But here's the thing about Googling something. Googling is not the answer.
Yeah.
It's what you find from Google. And if you just go for the first one or the one that looks like the most
do you
simple.
see the irony here? Is that I tried to take a shortcut and I'm wrong. And that's the same. That's the vampire fallacy in its own right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boom,
exactly
there it is.
right. Proves the point.
All right. Next. The 0 Dark 30 fallacy. And that's the name of a movie about the killing of bin Laden. This is the idea, the 0 Dark 30 fallacy. This is the idea that all you have to gain a victory in war is to gain visibility of an enemy's network structure and then conduct raids against that network, either with special operations forces or nodes. So the problem with both these fallacies, of course, they represent important capabilities you need to have. But these are capabilities that masquerade as strategies and simple solutions to the complex problem of war, neglecting war's political nature, neglecting war's human nature, neglecting war's inherent uncertainty based on the interactive nature, and finally, neglecting that it is ultimately a contest of wills. So, the idea that you can, again, it's attrition warfare. And I'll be honest with you, I never really looked at this as attrition warfare until I was researching for this podcast. I always said, hey, it's a raid mentality. Hey, we can just capture all the bad guys. But to say, yes, that's attrition warfare, that's exactly what it is. And especially for me, because I look at World War I as so awful, and it's an example of attrition warfare, and that's what makes it so bad. This is attrition warfare too. Hey, we're just going to capture or kill all the bad guys. How do you do that? What we're forgetting is, what about this line? When you do that, when you just say, hey, look, all we need to do is capture, kill the bad guys, this is what you do. You masquerade that capability to be able to do that, which is an awesome capability. Awesome capability. But that capability masquerades as a strategy. And listen to the things that you forget about. This list is classic. The complex problem of war. You neglect war's political nature, human nature, inherent uncertainty, interactive nature, and you neglect that it's a contest of wills. So and there's some great YouTube videos where McMaster's talking about that big lesson, learning that this raid mentality it's part of the way you defeat an insurgency. Part of the way you defeat an insurgency is capture, killing the bad guys. It's awesome. But there's so much more you have to address. That's like saying, hey, the way you win at jiu-jitsu is to arm lock the person. You could even say as broad as the way you win in jiu-jitsu is to submit somebody. Right? So if I taught you every submission I knew, but I didn't teach you how to transition, didn't teach you how many positions, there's no way you could win. It's the same thing here. Is submission important? Yes. That's what a raid is. A raid is the submission. It's one piece of it. It's not the whole game, though. It's not the whole game. And I think that's what he's making very clear here through that 0 Dark 30 fallacy. Next one is the Wild Kingdom fallacy. Back when America was wholesome, there was no reality TV, no Kardashians or anything. So, on Sunday nights, American families would watch this wildlife show called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And that show, what happened on that show is the host, Marlon Perkins, would send his assistant, Jim, to conduct exotic and occasionally dangerous field work. This is the belief that we could be like Marlon and just get Jim or other militaries to do our fighting for us. And this is a way in the minds of some people to reduce risk, but it actually increases risks because you are relying on other people whose interests are oftentimes incongruent with your own interests. And not only don't have the capability to fight and do what you need to do, but oftentimes don't have the will to do it. So he's saying this idea that we can we'll just have the Iraqis do it. Sounds like a good idea, right? Because I don't want my guys to get hurt or killed. There's a problem with that. The problem is they can't do what we do. They can't do it as well as we do it, and they probably don't have the will to do it. Now, credit to the Iraqis right now. They're moving through Mosul. They're getting after it. They're heavily backed by American forces, but they're taking the lead for sure. So, but when we were in Ramadi, those guys didn't have the will that we had. They didn't mean as much to them, if you can believe that. I know it sounds crazy. We had a battalion of Iraqi soldiers, talking about this with Leif, we had a battalion of Iraqi soldiers, so 500 Iraqi soldiers that had come to Ramadi as to help out in the fight. They left. They abandoned. They quit. A battalion of Iraqi soldiers. And here's the weird thing. The reason they brought this battalion in, one, we needed more manpower. Number two, they were Sunni. So Ramadi was a Sunni city, and bulk of the army at the time was Shia. So the Shias coming in and fighting in Ramadi, sometimes the Sunnis would say, hey, wait a second. Why are these Shias in here? So the idea was to bring the Sunnis in to help. And the Sunnis got scared. The Sunni battalion got scared and left. And one of the reasons they said, well, it's in a Sunni city. And I just said, wait a second. Well, that's the whole point. These are your people. These are other Sunnis that are getting murdered by insurgents. So it was just, it was a tough situation. And my point in saying that, and there's a whole another discussion we could have on that. But the point is that in order to win that fight, we had to be on the ground. The Iraqis were not going to do it by themselves. They were not going to. And that's what this fallacy is. Hey, that if we just direct other people to do it, then we'll be good to go and we don't have to take any risk. Now, again, how does that translate to what we do? Business? How does that translate to business? How does that translate to life? For me, it's real simple. The important things that you got to do, you got to do. The hard things that you got to do, you got to do. Okay, Tim Ferriss, can we outsource some stuff? Yes, we can. Don't worry, Tim. We'll outsource some stuff. But the important stuff, you have to do. You got to do it. You got to do it yourself. If it really means something, you have to do it. You have to have the will and you have to make it happen. Because if I outsource something to somebody, if I say, hey, I really don't feel like reading this book. I really don't feel like reading this book for the podcast. Can you read this for me? Well, yeah, somebody's going to read it, but they're not going to have my perspective on it. And they're just going to give me some notes and I'm going to sit here and read them. Yeah. We're not going to get the product that we need because that's important. I have to do the work myself. I can't outsource that piece. Can't do it. There's actually been people who have said like, hey, I can read the books for you and give you notes. I'm like, hey, I appreciate the offer. No, I got to read it. I got to do the hard part.
Yeah, and how you say it.
Trying to outsource that stuff. Echo Charles.
No, keep it in-house for sure. The congruency of interest, that's a big one. Because you can even think that the person has the same interest. And really, you both can think that, but just maybe in a different way, especially when you're thinking creatively. Like how you present this and what parts you think are important are going to be slightly different. Even if the person has the same interest as you, it's going to be different. Yep. So then at the end of the day, when you expect a certain result, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
You're let yourself down.
Yeah, man. Somebody just wrote, because we're doing Musashi, which is a giant book, and someone was highlighting Musashi the other day and kind of took a picture of it. And he said, I wonder how close Jocko's highlights are going to be to my highlights.
Yes, exactly.
And you know what? They're going to be close. They might even be right on.
Maybe.
But they might not be.
Yeah.
And I can't say, hey, bro, send me your book and your notes, and then we'll do the podcast, and I'm just going to cheat. Can't do that. Just like you can't say, hey, you know what? Iraqi forces that aren't ready, that don't have the same. Here's the big problem with the Iraqi forces at the time. The Iraqi forces at the time didn't have a vision of what their country could be like. So think about that. We Americans, we had inherently, being from America, we have a vision of what freedom is like. We know what that is. Iraqi soldiers didn't know what that is. They thought, man, they lived under Saddam for their whole lives. I mean, all the soldiers that we worked with lived under Saddam their whole lives. That's all they knew. So for them, we say, no, you're going to have freedom. They're like,
yeah, I don't know what
does that even mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means. We're thinking, hey, don't worry. These guys will fight. They're going to fight for their freedom. They're going to fight for their Sunni brothers. They're going to fight for their Iraq. They're kind of like, we don't even know. They didn't even really have a good vision of what Iraq is. Iraq is a country that used to be underneath Saddam, and now it's not, and we don't know what that means. We don't know what that looks like. We Americans had a vision of what that looked like. They didn't have it. So how are they going to fight for it?
Yeah.
To your point, they don't see what we see.
Yeah.
They had a different opinion.
Yeah.
So who's got to go on there and who's going to have the will to fight? The answer is us in that particular case. And it's the same thing right now. Like even in Mosul, even in the last time when Ramadi was taken back by the Iraqi forces, good on them. Props to the Iraqi forces right now. They're backed up by Americans. Americans are saying, hey, look, this is the vision. This is what you're going to do. Yeah. This is how we're going to take this part of it. And that is the big difference of why they didn't have the will. They didn't understand what they were fighting for. And you take anybody and put them in that situation. You don't even look at Vietnam War, right? You look at the Vietnam War, our American soldiers, some of them, you can go watch interviews. They were saying, I don't know what I'm fighting for.
Yeah.
Hey, they were actually questioning, I don't even know what America's like anymore. Right? It was really reading this book by Jim Thompson, longest held POW ever. And when he got back, when he got back to America, he was gone from 1964 until 1973. When he got back, when he left, America was fairly conservative and patriotic. When he gets back, people are burning flags, people are protesting. He was taken aback by it. And so if you took somebody that left for Vietnam in 1970 and America's in turmoil and all that, it's hard to have the same vision that they had in 1964, which is like, hey, America, we're going to go stop the communists. Communists are bad. Communists are bad. But then you start having the American Socialist Party that's telling you that communists are good, and all of a sudden the kids over there going, hey, look, I don't even know what's going on, but I'm not sure I want to die here in this jungle.
Yeah.
And that's problematic. And it's the same thing with the Iraqi soldiers. They just didn't know what they were fighting for. If you asked them what they were fighting for, they might say a paycheck. Yeah. Very few of them would say, I'm fighting for a free and stable Iraq.
Yeah.
Very few of them. Now, some of them fought against the insurgents. They didn't like the insurgents.
Right.
The insurgents were murdering people and raping women and torturing people. They didn't like that. And they'd fight hard against them. But not everyone experienced that.
Right.
Not everyone saw that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure they're kind of like, you can tell them what you're fighting for, and they can answer you.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
You don't feel, it's like, like your dad tells you when you're young, hey, clean your room. I want this room spick and span. And you're like,
you don't get it.
Yeah, I'm going to take this whole mess, I'm just going to put it in the closet just so he'll leave me alone kind of thing, And then meanwhile, your dad has this vision, is like, what's up with you? Why didn't you clean your room? Don't you understand? Kind of thing.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
No, you don't. You don't understand that your dad's trying to teach you that discipline equals freedom. My kids were running late this morning, going to school. Why are they running late? Because their rooms are messy. Well, you're running late. Everything's stressful now when we're heading to school. Why is that? Well, because your room is messy. Lack of discipline. Lack of discipline causes mental stress. Mental stress is not freedom.
Yeah.
But to your point, even trying to explain to the Iraqi soldiers why they're doing what they're doing on a really big level like that is difficult.
Right.
Is difficult. Now, occasionally you get a good leader. There were some good leaders. There was one of the generals that the Delta platoon commander worked with. He was a good dude. He was a good leader. And the Delta platoon commander actually had some really good Iraqi scouts as well that really believed in what they were doing. And I know that the reason I differentiate a little bit, the Delta platoon commander worked very consistently with the same guys a bunch, as Leif was working with multiple different groups. So the Delta platoon commander had some more tight relationships with some of those guys. Leif did too. But anyways, some of those guys understood what they were fighting for. But it's hard to, just like you said, explain what freedom is.
Yeah.
And the other piece of it is, in those situations, explaining what freedom is still no guarantee at all
that
freedom is coming your way. These guys have been through so much turmoil. That country's been through so much turmoil. They're like, hey, you know what? We don't even know. You can promise us that, but doesn't seem like we're doing too well.
Yeah.
How do we know you're going to win? How do we know we're going to win? We don't know that. So you know what I'm going to do? Lay low, see where this thing falls, and then I'll step up. Once I know who's going to win. Tough. Next, the RSVP fallacy. Thank you for the kind invitation to the war, but the United States regrets it is unable to attend. This is the belief that you can just opt out of war. It's a narcissistic approach to war, which we define only war in relation to us and what we'd like to do. So this idea that you can just be opt out doesn't work. The bottom line there is that you got to get in the game. The game's going to take place. The game's going to happen. And you're going to be affected by it. That's the key point. It's not a game that takes place on a field. It's a game that takes place on a field and expands out into the crowd, into the stands, into the town, and stuff starts getting burned. And riots take place. So you have to get in the game. That was the fourth fallacy of war. Now, I think that all those really show not just how smart McMaster is, but also how open-minded he is, which is a very important quality. I also think he's a realist. He's a realist and looks at things in a very real way. You know, this is what's happening, and this is what we need to do to deal with it. And also, what's great about McMaster is that he's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's got in trouble for that along the way. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how McMaster handles all the challenges that are ahead of him right now, not only in DC, but in the world. So it's going to be interesting, and we wish him, or I certainly wish him, the best of luck in that pursuit. So leading off with a little McMaster, and thinking about going to a little Q&A at this time.
Sure.
It's been a little while since we did Q&A here.
Yeah.
I've been doing Facebook Live.
Hell yeah.
And when I've been doing Facebook Live, I'm purposely not preparing at all. That's my goal. My goal is to not prepare at all. Because and the second it was the second one that I did, I started looking at the questions ahead of time, and I was saying, okay, well, maybe I'll just take a couple notes here. And all of a sudden I started preparing for Facebook Live. And then I realized if I'm going to prepare, I'll make it the podcast. So no, don't prepare. Facebook Live, ask me your question, and I'll answer it there on the spot. It's fun. It's different, right? It's easier. I can't do 2 podcasts a week because don't have time to prepare for them. But can do Facebook Live. You can slide that thing in.
And doesn't preparing for a live thing with the dynamics of Facebook Live, doesn't that defeat the live kind of purpose in a way?
It does, but we could do this podcast on Facebook Live. So we could prepare it and we could put it on Facebook Live. We could do that. But then it would be a rehash of what we're doing. Right. And the other piece of it is I think the Facebook Live is a way of people seeing a little bit more of me as a normal human being.
Right.
And not me as a guy with all the answers on stuff. Like, no, you asked me a question, I don't really know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, you know, obviously on this podcast is usually pretty serious. And so I'm not like that all the time. So maybe they could see, well, I have a serious side, no doubt.
Sure.
But I'm not like that all the time.
Yeah.
So I think Facebook Live is a good way to say, and plus, I don't want to answer some questions here for a couple of reasons. Number one, man, when somebody listens to the podcast, I want to make sure they're getting something of high quality, right?
Yeah.
Not just some fluff, right?
Yeah.
We're not doing fluff here. if we need to do fluff on the podcast, we just won't do the podcast because I don't want somebody to press play and waste time.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mind fluffing around and talking smack on Facebook Live because that's what it is. It's an open forum. We're going to have some fun. We're going to get after it a little bit, but it's not going to be super heavy because if you want that, come here, get your podcast on.
Yeah, it's kind of more lightened up a little bit.
Yeah. It's not like it's not like I said, okay, let's see. I need to show them my light side. No, but if you talk to me live.
Right.
It's like when Jody came on. Jody came on like after we were hanging out for like an hour. He's like, yeah, man, when I was coming down, I just thought you were going to be like full on psycho the whole time. I was like, yeah, I'm not full on psycho the whole time. If we're eating a burger, we're good. I'm not going to be sitting there while I'm eating a burger saying, let me tell you what. No, I don't want to do that when I'm eating a burger. I want to enjoy that burger.
Yeah, makes sense. But yeah, if it's a live Q&A, you know how like at like the muster or, when you guys, okay, we're going to do some Q&A. That's an example of like a live Q&A. You don't prepare for those questions, So
and also what's interesting about those questions is those I've given some. I mean, if you think about any of the podcasts that I've gone on, Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, Sam Harris, those guys asked me some heavy questions, right? Those guys weren't just asking me. We weren't just BSing, right? During those, so there's no guarantee that I'm not going to get a little bit serious on Facebook Live or whatever. I'm gonna do what people ask me.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, during the muster, we do a lot of Q&A during the muster. We get all kinds of questions. There's some really funny questions that require funny responses. Right. There's also some real serious ones that require very serious answers. And what's interesting, and this happens on Twitter too. Somebody asked me some dead serious question, like a very serious, something that's emotional to me, like about losing guys or something like that, guys killed in combat, and I'll respond to it. And then 2 tweets later, someone says, I'm going to have some mint chocolate chip ice cream tonight. You know what I mean? Yeah, so you go through these. If someone's reading, they must think I'm schizophrenic because I'm answering real serious, then it's real light, and then it's just kind of weird.
Yeah. The roller coaster, man.
Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster on the Twitter. Oh, Lord. All right.